everyone, good evening. Welcome to Dollar Bin Bandits. This is the episode we've all been waiting for. The man, the myth, the legend, Jason Mink, king of comics for breakfast, the old guys who love old comics network, and having a drink
We
with Mink.
like
Jason,
old
thank you so much for joining us.
We
We
like
love
old
comics.
comics. Some people
We haven't
love
made the
old
commitment to
comics.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. We don't want to make it weird. You know what I mean? We don't want
Right. We
we want to give old
we
comics a
enjoy them.
degree of autonomy amongst themselves, So we like them,
That's a good point.
we support them, go to bat for them when we
We're
can. Thank you for having me.
have to
It's
do.
great to be here.
Yeah. Again,
For
this
the first
is
time.
episode, as I say, we're going to be capturing lightning in a bottle. This is episode 6 with an asterisk on it. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And he's got his wall good ink.
so I'm gonna.
So what was the comic?
Sorry, go
I
ahead,
captured
Oren.
lightning in a bottle. That's right here.
That's it.
Lightning in a bottle, baby. Look for my eBay auction.
Go ahead, Oren. I'm sorry.
So what was the comic that got you hooked as a kid? What was the comic that got you hooked into collecting?
Gosh, I'd have to say that I was thinking about that earlier because folks in the group always say, what was your first comic book? I can never really remember my first comic book, but my big comic book, my main character, my boy, was Spidey. From the earliest days, from when I was 4 years old and watching the Electric Company, and Spidey was on the Electric Company, and then a little bit later on, the CBS television show. Spidey was ubiquitous on the newsstand. You couldn't turn around. You had Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Marvel Tales, obviously. I'm a big fan of the reprints because as a kid, what was happening in the 70s was cool, but it was Marvel Tales for me that was really my gateway into not only Marvel comics, but comics in general, because it was a fast track to work from some of the greatest creators working in the medium at the time. You know what I mean? So many great people worked on the title from issue 1 up until 137, I think, is when Marvel Tales stopped.
Right.
So they kept printing, but they went back, and started reprinting again.
Right.
And then after that, they got really erratic. But I'd have to say it was Spider-Man and Marvel Comics, Marvel Tales in general, because those books, if I had a quarter or 30 cents to spend, I would look at the newsstand, and maybe in that month's Amazing Spider-Man, you had the Mind Worm, or some weird off-the-wall 70s character. Who was the guy who sang disco songs and entranced people? Do you remember that guy?
Didn't he have like headphones or something like that?
He had like he had like I think he had headphones. Hypno Hustler. Hypno Hustler. So, I loved Spider-Man, and I would go to the newsstand, and it was like, who was there? Hypno Hustler, the Mind Worm, the Kangaroo, boring characters. But then, in Marvel Tales, you would have characters like Doc Ock, Green Goblin, it's just all the classics, Kraven, Electro, and with some of the best artwork, that had ever been in a Marvel comic at the time. So, what can I say? Can't say enough about them, apparently.
So I know you guys, and now I'm a member of it. Well, the old guys who like old comics. What is what is, just so people who are not aware of this? I'm sure everyone who is watching this is a part of your group, have seen it. But those who aren't, what does that time frame kind of entail when you say old comics?
1933 was the first comic book. I forget the name of it. I think it was. I should remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's something like Comics Cavalcade, Comics Wonderland, something like that. It was basically like, I think they bundled a bunch of newspaper strips together, folded in half, banged a cover on them. But it's basically 1933 is the beginning. of the golden age of comics, and then all the way up until what used to be considered the end of the Bronze Age of comics, which was 1986. Now that number's in contention. You know, a lot of people feel like it's more like 1980, 79, 81 for various reasons. But, you know, I always felt that due to comics like Dark Knight Returns and The Watchmen, both which came out in 1986, as well as just like a general shift in tenor and tone, that 1986 was kind of like the last time you were going to get work of that sort of vibe. You know, even though that spans, you know, a good 50-odd years, you know, it's just that was basically to be able to say, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on this much right here. And for a lot of people, they later on said, you know, it's amazing that you would say 86 because that's when I got out of comics. You know, a lot of people sort of bailed right around that point in time. Other people were just getting into them. Other people had bailed 10 years before. But, you know, it seemed like a good cutoff because it allows us to avoid stuff like Image comics, you know, and characters like Deadpool and stuff like that, because that's not really what we want to focus on in the group. You know, we like focusing on comics as a wide variety of mediums, you know, horror, western, crime, you know, funny animals, adventure, you know, you name it, all of those things. And if you go just a few years further, all of a sudden people are going to be posting their holofoil covers, you know, of Shatterstar #1, and it's just like, as cool as that stuff is, you know what I mean? Because I'm not knocking anyone who loves that stuff. If you love that stuff, more power to you, you know, and go out and get it now, because it's a lot easier to get a holofoil cover in a dollar bin these days, as you guys well know, than it was back in the day, because sometimes that stuff wouldn't even make it out onto the stand. You know what I mean? Because it was so hot at the time. So 1933 to 1986, in a nutshell, that's just the realm of comics with which old guys seem to vibe with the most. And there are a lot of people who still read comics today, people in their 60s and 70s in the group who never stopped going to the newsstand and never stopped buying new stuff. And there are people who stopped, like I said, 30 years ago, and only even started looking at that stuff because someone said, hey, there's a Facebook group that you might be interested in. They came on over and started checking it out. And before they knew it, they were excited about the prospect of comics again. So
cool. What was your...
Let me ask you something.
Sorry, Warren, go ahead.
Come on. I just got to say one thing that you mentioned is, you know, the holofoil covers, stuff like that. You know, comics were hot.
I'm sorry, I was way too close to the camera before.
I was just saying, what was the first time that... I would say, you were talking before about, you know, comics being hard to find because they were hot, they were popular and stuff like that. When did that start? When did you first start noticing people were looking for specific issues, or, you know, that comics sort of had a mystique about them, that these certain comics are ones you want to pick up as opposed to just, you know, any old thing?
Amazing Spider-Man #252, which was the first appearance of the black suit. Because up to that point, I guess there had been little ripples, you know, of interest, you know, like books like Howard the Duck, you know, when that came out in the 70s, you know, that was like a hot book and stuff like that. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't really see those books. It wasn't until I started going into comic book shops, you know, back in the early 80s that I started noticing that stuff. And the fact that Spider-Man was getting a new suit was a big deal. You know what I mean? As far as it goes, we were kids, and it was, you know, a topic worth discussing at length, apparently, for the amount of time my friends and I spent on it. So I'd have to say, Secret Wars #8 and Amazing Spider-Man #252, which were both, you know, black issues, black suit issues. And then X-Men was another real hot book at the time. You know, I remember... certain books, you know, being sort of harder to come by because that was the beginning of the Mutant Massacre, for example.
Right.
And since there were so many it was like a long story, you wanted the first couple, and if you missed the first couple, You know, you weren't going to have another 6 or 8 or 12 pieces of that story, you know, so you felt compelled to get that stuff, you know, and it's, some of that stuff's come down, you know, the X-Men prices seem to have leveled out quite a bit, whereas those Spider-Man books remain very, very hot, you know, very, very desirable, you know. All it takes is someone making a new Venom movie or a new Spider-Man movie or, you know, sneezing in Steve Ditko's Graves' direction, and it goes up in value, you know what I mean? It's the damnedest thing. So I'd have to say, yeah, Spidey, once again. I hate to keep beating on that drum, you know.
Well, I wanted to
What
ask...
about you?
Well...
What about you?
Well,
what was the first?
My first foray into comics was as a kid. I had a friend a next door neighbor who was a little bit older than me, so he would venture off to the comic book store, you know, with his brother, and he would get the new G.I. Joe comics, the first run of the Marvel stuff. So I would read them. You know, after, you know, when he would get them, I would go through his stack and read them. I was like, wow, this is cool. Because, you know, I was super into G.I. Joe and Transformers and all that stuff at the time. And then, you know, that kind of passed on, and I kind of forgot about comics. And then it wasn't until the death of Superman, which is when, you know, actually Orrin tapped out of comics, that I got into it, because I would go with Orrin and our friend to the comic book store, and I would read through their stacks, and I'm like, you know, I love reading this stuff. I know I'm probably annoying them by, you know, bugging them like, hey, what's going on with this guy and that sort of thing. And like the rest of the world, when I was like, what? Superman can die? That's crazy, you know, and that kind of got me into it. So, you know, I purchased at the time, it was a paperback version of the Death of Superman. So no pictures or anything, just complete, just dialogue and text. So no BAMs or POWs or anything. And I read the thing to death, and just, you know, like a couple of times, and the thing, you know, was falling apart. So I was like, this must be even better with pictures. So, you know, after that, I was like, all right, I'm going to start getting comics. And, you know, from there, it just kind of branched off. But, you know, I'd always been a Superman fan. You know, my first Superman will always be Christopher Reeve. And, you know, no matter how many versions there will be, not knocking anyone, you know, I think each actor brings their own kind of take on it. But, you know, just something about his Superman just not being burdened by his... you know, his gift, like every other, you know, Superman since, seems just miserable to be Superman. So, you know, that's
right.
my...
What about George Reeves?
You know, I like George Reeves, and I have seen most, if not all, of, you know, the Superman series. Someone gifted me a DVD or a set of those ages ago, and I enjoy them. But, you know, that's me watching them now. But I think, you know, when you're a kid and you see these movies, it takes on a little bit different meaning, in my opinion. You know, it just, you know, your imagination goes, you know, just goes crazy. And, you know, like they said, it'll make you believe a man can fly. So, you know, versus George Reeves, that was basically just like swinging through a window and, you know, land.
Well, bear in mind, it all depends on when you come into the show, because I was young enough that I saw George Reeves before the first Chris Reeves Superman.
Yeah.
So to me, that was kind of how Superman was. You know what I mean? Because to me, Superman was kind of the consummate grown-up, in a way. You know, it's just like you would look to other grown-ups in your life, humans that you knew who seemed kind of like flawed, you know, and imperfect, and would lose their temper and stuff like that. And Superman he seemed like, you know, the idealized, you know, father figure in a way. And that was something that I didn't get from Chris Reeve's performance. As much as I love his performance as
Yeah.
well, I was right there. It's just like I saw that movie in the theater as well. But I just wanted to, mention, for me, it's just like, because I had seen a Superman before that.
Yeah.
That my first take on it was a little different, just as a result of
of course.
getting an earlier taste of
Yeah.
it.
And I think that's what's so unique about kind of everything that we're doing, really. Like, you guys have this group about old guys liking old comics. Again, no one's knocking anything beyond that range, but everyone has their own certain, everyone has like their, what is, quote unquote, their superhero. And,
right.
they're, what I think is, they're kids now who are reading comics, and, as much as we may not like it, they're going to be like, the new 52 Superman, that's my guy. And, right. Of course, on the inside, we want to punch him, but at the same time, we're like, I can respect that. I get it. I understand.
Wearing your underpants on the outside of your clothes isn't for everybody.
No, of course.
In 2021, it's kind of hard to get away with that.
But hey, look, he was man enough to stick it out for as long as he did, right?
Yeah. Oh, they'll be back. They will be back.
Oh, they're already back.
They're no way, but they always return.
Definitely.
What about you, Warren?
It was Spider-Man for me too. My dad, he got me some Spider-Man books when I was a kid, and I remember it was one he was facing Doc Ock. The other one I got was actually the second appearance of Hobgoblin. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, the action in this is awesome. Like, but then they started buying me. Remember when Marvel had Star Comics as well? So there was like the Get Along Gang.
Oh yeah.
And really, comics for like little pipsqueaks. So they started getting me those books. Yeah,
right.
I remember just getting very testy. Like, I'm not a baby. Like, don't buy me these. But from there I got into the Fantastic Four, and it was. But we were lucky enough, Joe and I. We had a place called Dragon's Den, which was an official comic book shop. So they had back issues, they had new comics, they had stuff like that, and my dad, thankfully, he bought me a bunch of, when DC put out The Shadow in the 70s, he got me a nice run of that, some older Fantastic Fours, so I was able to, like, read some of these things, and it just kind of got me hooked, but like Joe said, once 92, 93 came around, it was just, there was the poly bags, and there was a lot of different things going on, and I like the foil covers, but it got to a point where it wasn't drawing me in as much, so I jumped back to baseball cards, and then I came back to comics a few years later. But it seems like for a lot of people, it's that story that we jump out, and then something happens, and we get drawn right back in, and it's like we don't miss a beat.
Yeah.
So that's how I got in.
Oh, right.
But
on.
I was about to ask you,
what was still into baseball cards at all, in any way, shape, or form?
Oh yeah, my daughter collects them. She still has some that she collects. I have, my little collection here. It's not little.
That's not.
But it was getting to the point where no. Yeah. But if I'm paying $5 for a pack of cards, and it's like, I can get 5 comics out of $1 bin, get 5 stories for the same amount as to 1 pack of cards that I might have already. So that sort of balances itself out of it. But I was going to say, what was the first time you went to an official comic shop?
That would be Ives Entertainment in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh. If you ever happen to be in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, stop by and I'll take you there. It was at the time Ives was on Pittsburgh's north side, so you'd have to walk across the bridge, which went over the river. And so that was pretty cool because as a kid, I grew up in the South Hills, so I didn't really see rivers on my side. So you would hop on a streetcar and go downtown, and it would only take you so far, and then you had to walk the rest of the way. And I didn't even believe this place existed at first. My buddy told me about it, and I called it Eddie's because I couldn't conceive of something called Ides. You know what I mean? It just as a word, it didn't make sense in my brain. But yeah, I want to go to this Eddie's place. What? Eddie's, the place with the comics. Oh, okay, man. So we went to Ides, and I think the first one was in like a butcher shop or something. But it was just this old building, and everything was on the first floor. But you had your comics and your records. They had 45s, which was really cool because punk was a big deal in the 80s when I was growing up. So they had a massive selection of like punk 45s, and this was stuff that otherwise you wouldn't hear. Unless you listen to like WRCT or something like that at just the right time. So I'd have to say it was like 1983 or so. It was motivated because I wanted to pick up Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars series specifically, and finding them on the newsstand was hard. The first couple issues, once again, were hot books at the time, and someone told me, no, I was down at Ides and they had them on the rack. So I went down there and, a love affair was born. And actually, I got my first Playboy magazine down there as well.
Nice.
Same time.
I mean, the first one I bought, anyway, didn't steal from someone's house or find in the woods somewhere. Some dodgy setup,
Do you remember who was on the cover?
She was blonde. I don't remember. I couldn't say.
That narrows it down.
I remember blonde, kind of soft focus.
Right.
It's just like that kind of like light little bokeh effect. It was wonderful. To go home with a couple comic books and a Playboy magazine and enough for a candy bar. The good old days.
That's a good day.
So it was the early '80s, and then eventually Ides moved from the north side to a downtown location, and they kind of hopscotched around a couple times, but they've been in their current location for about 10 years. And old guy who likes old comics, Supreme, Adam Seagard, came into town just yesterday with one of his buddies, and we went down to Ides, and they were blown away. It was super cool because you can find whatever you like down there, I'm guessing. Adam found a bunch of laser discs from the 80s. He's really into watching Laserdisc movies, so he found some really inexpensive Laserdiscs. His buddy found a big stack of TV guides because he collects TV guides. He walked out of there with a stack of TV guides this big. It was insane. So, try and come down to Pittsburgh one of these days. We'll shoot one of these things live, and I'll take you to my local comic book shop because it's the place to be.
Can we go to Primanti Brothers too?
Throughout the pandemic, everything else has been closed.
Yeah.
There's no place to go. My kid comes over on the weekend, and it's like, where do you want to go? We can go to the grocery store, or we can go to the comic book store. So,
how close is that to, or in relation to, Primanti Brothers?
Just probably like 2 miles.
I'm there.
Because, right on. There you go. Yeah.
If I didn't have any more reason to go.
Across the bridge.
Nice.
We got a lot of bridges in town, so as long as you don't mind crossing a bridge. As long as you're not a vampire and you can cross running water, you're okay.
That's deep cuts. Not many people bring up that fact or that little tidbit of information about vampires. It's
important
not
to know this stuff.
It is. It's really they don't mention it in they don't mention it in Twilight.
Right. Yeah. Maybe they did. And we were so dazzled by the sparkling.
What the hell?
And the emotional performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, that got me.
Right. The rich and resonant writing.
So, Jason, I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to create your group, and as a result, your series of videos? Because they're great. They really are really interesting, and I got to tell you, the tenor of your voice and everything is really engaging when you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. The group started out of loneliness
Okay.
because I had moved from Pittsburgh, where I had lived for a long time, and my young wife and I, abruptly moved to Youngstown, Ohio, for reasons.
Hmm.
And while I was in Youngstown, while she was in a position, she sort of knew some people from around that area because she was from that area in general. But I didn't know anybody in that area. And because of Youngstown used to be the crime capital of the United States of America. They've cleaned it up quite a bit, but subsequently now it's like The Walking Dead without zombies. You know, you
Okay.
go down there and it's just you just don't see people. You see buildings and you see, you know, parked cars, but you don't really see a whole lot of people. And you know, I had come from Pittsburgh, where I was actively part of the art scene. You know, I was in bands. You know, I was performing every other Thursday. You know, in various places, and so you know, it was weird. I got on my bike and I went downtown. You know, Youngstown when I first moved there, and I pulled up in front of this little cafe. You know, where some people were gathered, and I was like, "Hey, where do you go to read poetry around here?" And they said, "Pittsburgh." Touche! So I was lonely, and Facebook was there, and I was a member of a couple people's Facebook. No one says, "Hey, you're that guy." You know, they can just say, "Hey, when I was doing this at one time, you know, this was the cover idea that I came up with. You know, I did the lettering on that thing," and so, you know, that's what makes it. You know, really wonderful is the fact that it's a community of like-minded people, and hopefully we can continue to do it because recently social media has become very sensitive about what you can say and what you can do, and because we're a historical group, you know, our focus is on the history of the medium, and there are certain things that if you show them, people look at that and they get really upset. You know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, we're not showing you these things because we're advocating for them. We're saying this was actually relevant at one point in time. This was part of the evolution of the medium. And so it would be really good to be able to continue to share these things. And we actually have to be very careful. I was actually flagged by a social media site just last night for making a joke in a group where you make jokes. Yeah, and the thing is, I assume that I was flagged by a bot that looked at the language without context and said,
That's interesting.
all right, well, this is a violation. And they basically said, if you do this again, you're out of here. But it wasn't, I was making a joke in the context of the image that someone posted.
Right.
You know, it wasn't as though I was directing any sort of malice towards anyone. But simply because I said a certain word, I was not only flagged, but I was told that if I did it again, they could boot me. So old guys who like old comics could be here today and be gone tomorrow because of something as simple as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as far as it goes, it's a community that's wonderful to host, and I hope that I can continue to do it for as long as they'll allow me to. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, you know, when it comes down to it, you're sort of at the mercy of whoever's hosting your group.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Unless you want to come over to, you know, Mink Book, you know, get all your friends over to Mink Book, and, you know,
Trademark that now.
And as far as the videos go, Mike Jones told me to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. He kept saying, you know, old guys TV, old guys TV. And I was like, how do you do that? And I was like, well, you interview people, you know, you talk about stuff, and old guys TV. And it just stuck in my brain. And he showed up one day with a whole box full of camera equipment. And, you know,
Oh, really?
I went through it, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm in now. So, you know, it was basically off the races at that point in time. And we're 100 or so videos in.
That's great.
And, you know, it's tremendously satisfying when people let you know that they see it. and appreciate it. You know, it's good to know that people out there are watching it. So thank you, all of you, for watching.
I can appreciate it from the content point of view as well as the production point of view, because this is all my kind of thing. I love doing it. So the fact that I see the work that you put into it, I can really appreciate that and respect that.
They can take time.
Yeah.
You know, comics for breakfast can take days because sometimes you got to scan that stuff in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten lucky recently because I found like some scans that were available to me, and so I was able to like do a what if. But my copy of What If #7, for example, looks like I fished it out of a mud puddle. You know, not through any fault of my own, but because it was like printed at a time, maybe it was like on a bad press and it was really dirty, you know, and it lost a lot of like a detail and stuff. So the scanning and stuff can be a real bear. That's the hard part. But I would just say edit, edit, edit. That's the key to a good product. You know, it's just like at the end of this, go in and cut out all of my corny jokes. You know what I mean? And all the
or my stupid computer cutting out, you know.
or make a best of clip, you know, and just roast me.
Yeah, we could do that. We'll get a few more under our belts, and then we'll do like a blooper reel, and you know.
There you go.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, we were just interviewing someone we were fortunate to do, and I'll post that video hopefully late tonight, early tomorrow morning. But yeah, you know, it takes a fair amount.
I enjoyed your Mike Jones video.
Yes, thank you.
He's an awesome guest.
Yeah, it was really cool. But you know, you have to go back in and take out the ums and uhs and the pauses to keep it, you know, keep it moving along. So yeah, it's fun though. It's good stuff.
Right, absolutely, it's a blast.
I was going to say, one of my favorites is Comics for Breakfast, and one of the reasons I love it...
We'll have a great time. There's more? Are we done?
I was going to say, I just love the fact that you find a lot of the sort of, like the independent stuff from the 70s, you know, Atlas, Gold Key, Dell, a lot of these books that, you know, maybe not in everyone's wheelhouse that people might not know so much about, and you make it very, palatable. You put it out there, the stories out there. How did you come across these books? How did you come across some of these titles?
I fell out of collecting comics, I guess, after Nightfall, Death of Superman. You know, I was following those books with the idea that, like, look, if you're going to give me a new Green Lantern, I'll accept that. If Wally West is the new Flash, I'll accept that. Stick with it. You know what I mean? And I spent the money on the comic books, and I was willing to go down that road with them, but then to have them dial that stuff back. You know what I mean? Like, no, Superman isn't really dead. No, Batman isn't really out of action. No, Wally West, you know, he isn't really the Flash. It's actually Barry Allen. And Hal Jordan, no, he's still the Green Lantern. You know, it's just like I got to the point when it was like I felt so burned. You know what I mean? I got really burned on that stuff. And so I just stopped collecting books. I stopped buying them. And my focus right then turned to action figures. Because at the time, the Marvel Legends action figures had just started coming out. And for me, it was like to be able to have a really nice Captain America and a Thor and an Iron Man that I could set up on my shelf and just look at. And it's just like, well, I can think my own adventures at these things, you know. Right. Later on, I got a camera and I started taking pictures of them. And I started writing for the whoosh.com and taking my own photographs for that and building dioramas. I got really, really into action figures for a while. But it got to the point where those things, much like cards, collectible comics, you get frustrated at your inability because there's so much competition for these things. You know, I would just want to go to the store and find some figures, but you could never find them because they were so hot and so popular. You know, you would try and order them online or buy them from eBay, but everything cost a fortune because that was the hot thing right then. Right. So I lost my excitement for that thing. I still love taking pictures. I still collect the Mego action figures, but round about that time, I found myself just wanting something more. I was at a toy show, and I walked past someone who had a big box of comics, and it said like $10 on it. I was like, "What's up with the comics?" And they were like, "They're $10. $10 a piece?" I said, "No, the whole box is $10." Here, I'll take it. I took it practically sight unseen because I could see yellow paper. I could see that they were older books, and I took them home and I started reading them. And not only were there those Marvel and DC books in there that, I'd grown up and loved, but there were books from Charlton and books from, weird publishers like Tower Comics. I hadn't seen a Tower comic until I was in my 30s. And that seems crazy to a lot of collectors, I'd probably seen like pictures of them and stuff like that, but to actually like hold a Tower comic in my hand, I hadn't any exposure to those. But right around that time, that stuff, people were booming them out, the guy had a box of it, he thought it was junk. He was just trying to make a couple bucks at the toy show, and I rediscovered that magic again. In that box were things like Archie's, books that I would have completely dismissed as a younger person, but just cracking them open and starting to read through them and realizing, like, these are good stories. This is great artwork that no one is paying attention to. Especially, like Adele and stuff like that. I would never look twice at those books, but then to get something like, what was it, Yogi Bear Goes to Washington. It's just like I would see that in a $1 box, and I'm like, Yogi Bear Goes to Washington? I have to have this. My rule became anything that I would have excited me as a kid, I want now. Because that's what I want, is that sense of surprise. I want to be able to look at something and, okay, you got me, Yogi. Let's go. I'm right there with you. I'll bring the picnic basket. I want to know. So the magic of comics waits in rediscovering them. A lot of people get hung up on grades and keys and the hot books. And so many people in the group will post like the same Hulk 181s, and the same like, classic covers and stuff like that. And those things are all wonderful. But it's just like, I'd rather see a battered little Lulu that I've never seen before, because to me, that's something new. You know what I mean? That's where the excitement is. That's where the game is.
Right.
So it's just all about being motivated to keep getting that thrill that comics give you. If you can get it by just looking at them on your phone, and reading Marvel comics or DC comics, that's awesome. But there's so much out there. When you discover the history of Marvel and you realize so many of those guys worked for all those other companies too. So It's just like, if you like Gil Kane, well, there's plenty of Gil Kane out there that you've never seen if you haven't gone beyond DC and Marvel, or Wally Wood or any of those guys. Wally Wood. You know what I'm saying? I know these are very long answers.
No,
but, you feel passionate about a subject.
Of course,
You do go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, from your shows and the stuff I read, it seemed like Atlas had a really good formula out there. We're going to do a lot of different books of we're going to do Westerns, we'll do horror, we'll do true crime, we'll do superheroes. And they had good talent. The production seemed all right. What do you think was the missing ingredient that kept Atlas from taking that next step?
Well, Atlas's formula in the 1970s was just Atlas's formula in the 1950s. Because Marvel Comics was Atlas Comics before Atlas Comics was Atlas Comics, if you know what I mean. Marvel started off as Timely, then they became Atlas, and then they became Marvel that we know. And after that, when the companies, Martin Goodman sold the company, his ass was really chapped because his kid didn't get the job that was promised to him. And so Goodman thought, I'm going to show these punks how it's done. And he just basically did what he'd always done, which was chase whatever was hot at the time. So it's just like he covered his ass. So he got Western. He had a kung fu book. He had a vampire book. He had lots of superhero books and stuff like that. But the problem is, they weren't consistent. There wasn't enough of like a presence. There was no other association. You know, like, as I said right at the beginning, growing up, when I was 4 years old, I knew who Spider-Man was. 3 years old, maybe even 2 years old. From a very, very early age, those characters were right there. Batman was on your toothbrush. Wonder Woman was on the peanut butter jar. You know what I mean? So you knew who they were. Whereas Atlas, you look at those characters and they seem like something out of, like, you know, maybe you ate a pastrami sandwich and had a couple beers and went to bed and had like a really weird dream, you know, because they're very similar to Marvel characters, but they're just like tweaked out in kind of a weird way. And granted, a lot of the same creators worked on those titles, but it just wasn't the right time for those books ultimately. And you need more of an establishing presence. You know, you just can't come in and drop 26 books or 13 books or however many Atlas was doing and expect people to pay attention. It got to the point where Atlas books were being returned without even being opened from the bundles, you know, because it just wasn't working. So, yeah, and I find those books fascinating. For me, you know, they were like dirty Marvels. You know, they had a little more sex and a little more violence, and you were a little more likely to get like some grit, because by the time I was a kid, you know, in like the 76, 77, Marvel's edges were pretty soft. And once again, that's why I like those reprints, because, you know, you could get an old Batman reprint where he kicked someone's ass around. You weren't necessarily seeing that, you know. So Atlas, had they been around longer, I would have been a lot more interested. You know, there was like a weird knockoff toy company, I think AHI, did some monsters. And I remember some kid told me, these are the Atlas characters in toy form. And I remember thinking like, oh man, how cool is that? You know, being really excited at the prospect of there being another avenue, someone other than DC or Marvel. But it just wasn't meant to be. You know, so you had DC, you had Marvel, and you had Archie. You know, those were and it's just like anyone else who was trying to come along and gun for them. Oh, nice, excellent.
Picked that up yesterday, thought of you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so I mean, you know, and Marvel by that point was number one. You know, they'd really consolidated their presence on the newsstand, and it's just, and it wasn't just because the books were quality, but because there were business deals that were made. And if you reneged on one of those deals, who knows? You might get your legs broken. You know, these were the wild and woolly 1970s. They're not like today. You know, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen, you know, today, but, you know, back then things were a little faster and looser, you know, so.
It wasn't as corporate.
But
it's not Disney Marvel.
Right, but I can't recommend the Atlas books enough if you find them for cheap, you know, in like a dollar bin, because you can't go wrong for $1 if you don't know what to expect, and you open it up and you see something you never seen before, and you get a chuckle or two. You know, I read Tiger Man for Comics for Breakfast. I was laughing my ass off at that book, you know, because it was written by an adult with an adult sensibility, and like, okay, right, I'll write this. You know, and it feels like it's being written for a check, but there's enough, like, you know, resentment in there on the part of the creator to make it funny, you know, and it's just like some of the stuff, you're just like, wow, you would never see that in the Marvel comic book, you know, like allusions to like nightlife and stuff like that, drug use, you know, so I can't recommend them enough. Atlas Comics, baby.
Very nice.
Lomax.
Yeah, Lomax, right, exactly. Oh, and Luke Malone. You can't be forgetting Luke Malone, the private investigator.
Yes, if you see those books, please pick them up. They are well worth your time.
Absolutely.
Question for you. It's not necessarily old or new. Well, I guess maybe it is. Anyway, I'll just ask. So a few years back, I think Marvel and DC both kind of decided not to follow the comic book code anymore. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the comic book code was completely unreasonable.
Okay.
The comic book code was horseshit. I mean, it was, it had long outgrown any usefulness that it may have had, at that point in time, because Marvel had discovered they didn't need to put that thing on their books to sell them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The Spider-Man drug comics, I think that was like 97 to 99 or something like that. The issues where Harry Osborn is struggling with, it seems like acid, it seems like speed. I don't know what he's on.
Yeah.
But the kid was out there, folks, let me tell you. They realized that they didn't need it on their comics. And, the fact that you couldn't put the word vampire on a comic. You know what I mean? You couldn't use the word horror on a comic book cover. You know what I mean? They made no sense. It's just like when you have those sort of restrictions imposed by a moral body,
right?
Art is always going to suffer. 10 out of 10 times. You know what I mean? Because it's just like you've put people who don't necessarily understand this thing. It's like the social media bot that flagged my post that was meant in jest in reference to the image. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't understand the context. It just sees something and goes, bad, bad, bad! So the comics code, there's no use for it, and it's just, I think that it was great that they did away with it as quickly as they did. It was a limited imposition, and there is some argument to be made that limitations lead to greater creativity, as far as it goes, because a lot of people continue to try and work in the industry, and, it's just the shift went away from horror, for example, to suspense. So, it's just like I've got a lot of, like, suspense books, from, like, 56, 58, and sci-fi, and more speculative fiction, sci-fi, like a Twilight Zone kind of thing. So, it was just like, it was what it was when it was, and, people have talked about it at length, much more eloquently than I have, but I think that it's good that it's gone, you know what I mean, because I don't really think that that's appropriate. You know what I mean? I don't think that we need that sort of thing. It's just, it's up to the consumer to make those choices.
I agree.
Speaking of creativity, though, you, Eric Luna-Salazar, Storm Owl, Yeet Presents, how have you found that process, creating your own comic?
It's been wonderful, because I've always wanted to do it. I can't tell you how many little bits of paper had been jammed into my pocket with ideas written on them, just concepts that I had going to work on the bus, and it's just like, oh man, I would so love to, write my own comic. I used to, when I was very young, I would do the artwork myself, but I'm not an artist. Honestly, the art in those things was more as kind of like to accent the humor of the thing as opposed to represent the storytelling. So I'd always wanted to do it, and to be able to work with such a sympathetic and talented creator like Eric has been tremendous, because he's just phenomenal. He's a remarkable artist, and so much of what Storm Owl is comes out of his mind. I write the stories, but what you see and what you feel, when you see Storm Owl flying through the city on a winter's night, that's Eric putting you there. It's just like he's the one who has the ability to, manifest those things that would otherwise just be little bits of paper in your pocket. You know what I mean? And at the same time, it's great for Eric because he likes being able to work on something that has an ongoing story. You know what I mean? You could draw lots of pinups and you could do lots of one-shots and stuff like that. But Storm Isle actually has a beginning and a middle and an end. You know, there'll only be about 30, installments of it, and then it wraps up. You know, it's meant to be not a realistic look, but a slightly more feasible look at the sort of arc that a person would have if they actually did do something like put on a costume and go out and get into fights and stuff like that. Even, under the best of circumstances, you're only going to be able to do it for a very limited time. And Eric understands that, and every page that he sends me is even better than the last. It's just I'm floored. I'm thrilled to be able to work with him, and I'm very excited to be able to bring the work to people who read it, because now that we're 6 issues in, Storm Isle issue 6 will be out in a couple weeks, actually, and he presents. And so you'll be able to pick that up, and then now that people realize there's like an ongoing story, you can go back and look at it and look at the first issue and realize that issue 4 is making reference to that. You could pick up issue 4 and read it. You don't need to read issue 1, but there's a big connected kind of thing that's happening there. And so it's a great pleasure to be able to do it. And cheers to Mike Jones for being able to, allowing us, the opportunity to tell the story, because it's wonderful. And Mike seems to appreciate it. So, there's also that element of at the very least, Mike is enjoying them. So, yeah, it's been a great pleasure to work on it. And, I'm thrilled, and I just can't wait to do more. Actually, I'm doing something with Warren Muzak in a future issue as well. It's completely different than Storm Isle. It's a humor thing. Funny animals. You like funny animals, kids? Come on by and check it out.
Jump on board, yeah.
yeah, right. Get the first issue. It'll be a key.
Oh, I want to get that graded.
Yeah, as well you should. Mike had a great story. He took a couple copies of Yeet and he beat them up really badly. He crushed them all up, and he took them out in his driveway, and he jumped up and down on them, got them all dirty, and then he sent them in to be graded. And apparently there was like some sort of miscommunication with his address, and the books got lost. But he thought that would have been wonderful, for our first show to have, Storm Isle and the Black Fury, there on the table graded, 0.0005, missing pages, missing staples, mayonnaise stain, that sort of thing. So, yeah, key issues, We all have our issues.
Yeah, man, that's a number 1.
So who do you hope to have on the show in the future? Do you have any awesome guests lined up that you can reveal to us, or is it all very hush-hush?
No, I don't think it's real. It's up to you, Arnold.
We have
or just in general, what sort of thing do you want to have in the future?
Well, Stanley died, so that's not going to happen.
Would you be bored?
So we have, and I can always go back in and cut this out if we want to, but we have William Messner Loebs that we just interviewed, and so I've been working on his. We talked to him for a while. That was a good almost 2 hours, so I've been trimming that one down.
Right. Bill has a lot of amazing stories.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, you could just say one thing and he'll just hit you with such interesting stuff. And then we have a friend of Oren's, Al Snow, who part of the wrestling world, but also a comic book fan. So we're going to be interviewing him, and that's little boy inside of me is going to be freaking out over that one. So that'd be cool.
And then tentatively we have. I just have to.
You should talk to Tom Warzachowski.
Yes.
He's spoke for Tuesday.
Tom Warzachowski, yeah, he's great. He's got a lot of amazing stories as well.
Yes.
I would highly recommend him as a guest.
Yeah, he's supposed to be on Wednesday. We're supposed to talk to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then we're all on the same page.
Yeah, no. So we have.
And then,
go ahead.
no, I would say we're trying to get people. It's just the time of day to get things done and taken care of.
No, life
So-
gets in the way. So we know how that is. So we're
I would say, do you want to show us?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if Jason wanted to show us some
Show
of
me
his
what?
the dollar issues you got the other day, or are you saving them for another episode?
Oh, dude. Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's do it.
I'm
Bring it
ready.
on, bro.
I'm ready. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Come on, do it.
Let's do this.
Come on.
These were actually gifts from Adam Seagard. Adam stopped by yesterday, and he brought me some amazing stuff. I can't say thank you enough to Adam. Want a beast?
Oh wow.
I just got that.
Yeah. Sorry about the glare. Yeah, I'll try that. Yeah. See, I've seen this book in advertisements in other DC books, but I never had the opportunity to read it. So I'm super stoked. And then there's another one, Want a Beast, right there, waiting to be checked on out. And then I was really excited to see this reprints of Magnus Robot Fighter.
Okay.
So ordinarily this book would be pretty pricey, but it's nice to be able to read this nice tidy reprint. Very excited
Dark Horse is
about
putting that out?
And then what else do we have here? So much to talk about. An entire run of Shogun Warriors.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
how
geez.
cool is that?
That's pretty
man?
cool.
As a kid,
Yeah.
I was a nut for Shogun Warriors, and I had like 1 or 2 issues of the comic, couldn't make heads or tails of them. So I'm hoping if I read them from beginning to end, it'll make a little more sense.
That was always my. I had a couple of. I don't know how, but I had toys of those as a kid, and they were like my Voltron adjacent figures.
Right. Oh yeah. No, they're phenomenal pieces. Absolutely. As a kid, I had the Great Manzinga, and he was the dude with the crown on his head and like those sort of like looked like old style armor face plating. And the drag was they couldn't get the rights to him for the Marvel comic. So they had the other 3 Shogun Warriors, but my favorite one never showed up in any of the media. So, first world problems, what I mean? And then we got some Steranko.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Shield.
Yeah.
I heard that shield thing may be something someday.
Right, yeah, you never know.
They may turn that into a TV show or something.
And then it's beautiful blue cover. Submariner.
That's a nice.
Initially
Yeah.
when I would see pictures of this, posted online, it kind of looks like it's like faded or something. Like you left it out in the sun, but no, it's just a blue toned cover. Always loved that stuff, And then the amazing thing about the group is you never really know what you're going to see. Someone posted Reno Jones, Gunhawk, and I had never heard of that character. I know that Marvel had a lot of Western characters, but I had never seen Reno Jones before. And then, what do you know? There's actually 2 issues of Reno Jones right here. So very excited to be able to check these out. It's started off Reno Jones and Kid Cassidy, Gunhawks, and then I think that something happened, and Reno Jones, they thought that he killed Kid Cassidy, and so then he was on the run trying to prove his innocence, in that classic Bruce Banner style. And let's just show you a few more. We have a thrill adventure, The Man in Black.
We'll put that one out.
Phenomenal cover right there. I'd actually done a Man in Black on Comics for Breakfast. Very interesting. little publication. What can you say?
Oh, wow.
The piranha.
That's Harvey, right?
You know, I like books like this because they're so dreamlike. Yes, yes. You know, for a long time, to this day, actually, periodically, you know, I'll have dreams about walking down the street and I'll see a comic book in the gutter, you know, soaked with rain. Go over to it and you pick it up and you look at it and it's weird. It's got a weird, unrecognizable cover, but yet, you know that it's this cool old thing, you know, and then I'll look over and I'll see a couple more and then I'll see like stacks of them, like someone had like thrown them out or something, boxes and boxes of these old comics. So, you know, gotta be careful. The stuff can get on top of you.
Yeah, pretty quick.
So yeah, you know, it's I got loads and loads of amazing books. You know, we could be here all day just looking at those. Maybe look at one or two more.
Okay.
Just because I like looking at them myself. You know, if you'd ever seen these Marvel Classic comics adapting Jekyll and Hyde,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. That's Gil Kane artwork, pretty fantastic. And then we have the Time Machine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, how phenomenal is that? And also, the Odyssey.
Now, were these books popular?
I don't think so. I don't remember ever seeing books like that on the newsstand. You know, when I was growing up, maybe as a kid, I would just sort of focus on what I was looking for, but I don't really remember seeing books like that or horror comics. You know, like as a kid in the 70s, I loved horror comics, and whenever I would go over to a friend's house and they would have like a Tomb of Dracula, you know, or like a Werewolf by Night, I was like, wow, this is cool. But I would never see those books on the newsstand for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Oh,
I always loved the cover.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, I actually had a Mead notebook with this cover back in the 70s. Mead did a whole bunch of Marvel product. And they would basically just slap a cover onto a notebook or a binder or something like that. And it's become a very iconic image. Very cool. And we'll do one more. Fantastic Michael Kaluta.
I just got that.
This thing.
I say, Joe, you just got
I
that.
just
Nice.
picked that up yesterday.
Excellent. You know, well, it looks like a book from the 40s.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like the cover of like a Weird Tales or something like that. And I would see this book and I would look at the date and I would think that can't be right. That book came out in the 70s, but it's that elegant Michael Kaluta line work. Very nice. What do you have, Joe? You have dollar bin finds?
I do, and I don't. So I ventured up to Orin's neck of the woods, this place he's been telling me to go to for a while, and I did some damage. Got about $65 worth of stuff. Because I do have kids and a wife, so she may shoot me. But so I've been trying to gather as many of the DC Who's Who series.
Oh, right. Nice.
So I know that they put out recently like a ultimate omnibus type hard. I think it was like a hardbound. I mean, just like the ultimate version of that.
Right.
But I've been trying to find the as many of the originals as possible. So this place had like just a ton of them. So I got as many as I can get my hands on. So I got a bunch of those. That one,
that's a lot of bang for your buck, right there.
It was really. Look. This place had just stacks. I mean, it was a little unwieldy to go through them because of the way they were. They weren't in boxes; they were stacked, so you couldn't easily flip through it. So after a while, you spend so much time going through it, moving it. And after a while, I'm like, all right, this is getting to be stupid, so I got to move on. So I definitely got to go back and do some more damage. But so yeah, I got that. I got some old Superman ones that I've always just any old Superman I can get my hands on.
Nice. I like the purple cover.
Yeah. Badass Bizarro. And then this for not a lot of people, this was kind of didn't really care about it, but Panic in the Sky was one of the storylines that caught my eye when I first started reading comics. So it was kind of like a prelude to the death of Superman, as I recall. So I started, that jumped out at me. And just Indiana Jones, man.
Oh, nice.
Love me some.
That's cool.
This one, so as a kid, I know this was a big comic, and they had a ton of versions of these, various prints where they were different colors, and there was a hollow foil, but it was a McFarlane Spider-Man.
Right.
So dug this one a lot.
Is that 1 or 6?
This is 1 of 5. I didn't get it for the story. I'll read it, but I just always loved this comic, and I just remember hearing an interview with McFarlane, when he did Spider-Man, he wanted to make sure just all the lines, for the webbing, it just looked like a real web. So, if you look closely at this, you could see the fine lines in each one of these, the web's cross sections. So, thought that was cool.
Oh, right. Nice.
So, I have some more, but I won't,
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I guess.
What about you, Warren?
We're doing.
What do you have?
Joe and I. We're going to do a video about some of the stuff we got.
Yeah.
Just for the viewers to know. But I pulled some. I got Incredible Hulk 236. Him battling Machine Man.
Nice.
Yeah, and then of course he has a run-in with Captain Marvel.
Oh, right on. Hold on. See, my camera holder. There we go. Better.
That's a little better. An older Swamp Thing, where it looks like he's taking on maybe the New Jersey Devil.
That's cool.
Oh, right. Nice.
Yeah. Just another Hulk. I like the older Hulks. I think this is Herb Trimpe art, but here's one right up your alley. Spoof, number 5.
Oh, cool. Cool. I picked up 2 and 4, but I don't have 5. Is that a Marie Severin cover?
Yes, it is.
Nice.
Yep.
Hold it up
this
so
one
I
I
can
got-
see it. I couldn't quite see it.
Taking on
Oh,
Night
right
Gallery.
on. Nice. Excellent. That was one of my
Nice.
favorite shows as a kid. That's actually
Oh,
who I
really?
modeled my voice on. Rod Serling, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I learned how to pronounce words from Fred Rogers, and then I modeled my approach on Rod Serling.
I say Pittsburgh, his hometown.
A boy's got to have role model. Right, right.
That's true.
A sweater wearing older man and a chain smoking. Go on.
They're almost the same. I got Forbidden Planet, number 1.
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Who's the publisher on that?
This one is Innovation. So I think this was like in the mid
Is that
80s
like
they
from
came
the
out.
80s
Yep.
or something?
Yep.
Copy that.
I think 86 or something like that.
Right, right.
Spider-Man. Superman and the Spectre.
Oh, nice.
Then I got X-Men Annual number 6, where it looks like Storm has for some reason turned into a vampire and bitten somebody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cool. Nice.
I love how they
Couple
recycle
more,
that pose.
Batman and in every single
That whole,
Batman.
someone holding someone and they're dead, crying.
Yeah, it's
Right.
one of those classic.
Well, it's from
poses that
Crisis.
work, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this one, So some kid decided to draw James Bond 007 on all his comics, but this is Superman being attacked by Dracula and Frankenstein.
Oh, wow. Nice. Fantastic.
Why? I don't know. Again, now he's written James Bond.
DC Comics always had the weirdest reasons for bringing monsters into the mix. For Marvel, it always seemed very organic, but with DC, you know, anytime they'd have like a monster, it would turn out to be like a robot or a colony of aliens in a Dracula suit or something like that. So,
yeah, nothing is it appears. You're probably right. It's probably some aliens. No, I think you're right on the money with that. So,
yeah,
another Superman
wax statues,
and you know this scene right here will take place for like one panel, and then we'll just go on to something else, and you'll be suckered in thinking like, oh wow. But no, I know it's. I probably get a kick in the groin from reading this one. Then Superman versus Cobra, which is such. I've read a lot of Cobra comics with the twins, and one's good, one's bad.
Right.
I didn't think Cobra was like a Superman-worthy character.
Now, I
didn't think so either, but...
Are you wrapping up the Cobra story in that Superman issue? Because I think that comic was canceled
I'm not too sure.
Before...
It probably
that's how
is.
They would usually do it. You know, they would roll one of those characters over into like a regular title and just finish their story up there. You know, unless they.
That's probably how they did it. So that way. Yeah, they just might have been desperate for somebody to jump in, but of course now he's speaking with a hiss in this one.
Oh right.
And then finally, it's Batman and the Scalp Hunter taking place. It says Batman strapped to a cannon in the middle of the Civil War. Sure. Okay.
Whoa. Yeah.
Now I don't know if this comic would fly now.
You know, it'll fly in the old guys group for as long.
It would be Batman and the Texas football team.
Right. Until we get flagged for posting that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because jokes, man, they're deadly. Not only is comedy not pretty, but, you know, it can be downright violent.
Oh, yeah. People very testy about the strangest little things. So, what are some books that you can recommend for folks to take a look for when they're in their dollar bins?
I would recommend that you look for Martial Law. I think it started off at Eclipse Comics back in the late 80s, and then probably jumped over to like Dark Horse, maybe, you know, and it's kind of hopped and skipped and jumped around, but I love that book. It's a wonderful book. It's very irreverent. It's a book for people who love superheroes but don't mind laughing at them. You know what I mean? Because it basically will just completely dismantle the tropes. You know, a lot of the stories will take place in like, you know, one shots. You know, so in one issue he'll go to like an asylum and all the Avengers are there. You know, analogs of Marvel characters. Then in another one he'll go and he'll join this team. They're like an analog of the Fantastic Four. You know, but they'll come in and they'll just break these characters down in such a brilliant way that tremendously funny, very dark. You know, it's just like if you enjoy like that kind of like edgy, more adult kind of humor, you know, more adult take on that stuff. I know that the show The Boys, you know, in the comic The Boys is very popular. This was sort of The Boys before The Boys. You know, and you can still find those books very inexpensively. You know, I see them in dollar bins all the time, and even if I have them, I still buy them because I want to give them to people and say, here, you know, because sometimes it'll be store overstock, you know, when they ordered more than they needed, and those books had never even been cracked. So to be able to give someone a book that retailed for $5, that you know is awesome, and you could pick it up for $1. You know what I mean? It's not only, you know, it's a great gesture, but you're really giving them something wonderful as well. Mr. Monster can be found in dollar bins. Nexus, you know, also Badger.
Oh yeah.
You know, all of those books, you know, very, very well worth looking for. Also, in the 80s and 90s, there was a big renaissance of reprinting strip books, horror. I think New England Comics did Tales Too Terrible to Tell, and they would reprint like pre-code horror that wasn't censored and stuff like that, so you were able to read these stories sometimes for the first time ever, you know, back before the internet and stuff made it possible to see all that stuff. But and I found last time I went to a toy show, there was a comic book dealer there, and he had, you know, like a big stack of these black and white reprints. You know, and for $1 a throw, the stories and the art that's in there, man, phenomenal. You know, so I mean, but ultimately, my recommendation would be just go to the dollar bin and start looking through it and see what motivates you. You know what I mean? It's just like, and don't look at the same books that you've seen 100 times. If you've seen that Hulk book, don't stop on it. Keep going. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to look at an Archie. Don't be afraid to look at, you know, like a Shogun Warriors book. You know what I mean? Or just some other weird thing. Maybe you read it when you were a kid and didn't enjoy it. There's a very good chance you'll enjoy it now because tastes change. You know, so basically the dollar bins are the last great thrill. You know, because you don't know what you're going to find in them. Usually when people set up like that, they don't care what's there. They just want to sell that shit and go eat lunch. You know what I mean? So it's a gold mine. You know, gold is where you find it. You know, that's that old saying, and it's true. You know, you just got to look. You got to play to win. So,
well said, my friend. Well said.
There, you know. And I have my favorites, obviously. You know, anything that's 12 or 15 cents. You know what I mean? Like I don't really like DC books. I don't really like Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. But if I can find a Sergeant Fury from 1986 for $1, I'm taking it home. I'll learn to like war comics. You know, or I'll trade them to a pal. You know, it's just, you can't go wrong. And the thing is, you kind of, if you love that stuff, I'd say go and look for it now. Because as these movies come out, you know, for example, that WandaVision show, I watched a couple episodes of it, seemed pretty cool. It's a lot of people have said a lot of very positive things about it. But for the longest time, you could find those West Coast Avengers issues in the dollar bins.
Yes.
And that was a great run. If John Byrne had been allowed to stay on that book, I would have bought it forever because I loved what he was doing with that. It made the Avengers exciting again for the first time since the Masters of Evil storyline in Avengers 271 to 276, 277. That was the first time I got worked up about the Avengers again. Well, now a couple of those books are big money books, you know what I mean? And it's just like, for the longest time, you pass right by the White Vision, who gives a rat's ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've had that book half a dozen times. Well, guess what? Now it's very valuable. So when you have the opportunity, especially once things start opening back up, go out there, splash a little bit of money around, go to a comic book store and keep them open. You know what I mean? Support your local comic book store. Go to flea markets. Go to yard sales. You know what I mean? And because it's a win-win for everybody.
Yep.
You know, I'm not saying that you're necessarily going to find Amazing Fantasy 15 out there. You don't have to. You know, as long as you find things that give you pleasure, you know what I mean? And you can maybe even pass on to the next guy or gal. You know, you're doing great. You know, because what do you spend on a burger and fries? You know, you could get $10 comics for that. So it's the last great thrill. You know what I mean? So cheers to the dollar bin bandits. You know, you guys are,
amen to that.
You're definitely doing it. You know, that's what it's all about. You know, it's just don't focus on the hot shit and the trendy shit. You know, focus on all the magic that's waiting to be found out there, you know.
Right. A very good point. It's like a treasure chest.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us again. And
No problem.
it's
Can't wait
been
to see what happens this time.
well, you know, look, my computer crapped out for a second, but we're good. We're good. We got it rolling. So thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and make sure everyone checks out Jason's group, Old Guys Who. You say it because I don't.
Right.
Like
Old
old
guys
comics.
who like old
I was going to say enjoy old comics, but that's just stupid. Old guys who like old comics.
Old guys who like old comics on Facebook, and old guys who like old comics network on YouTube.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
No, it's you know, I kicked myself that I wasn't able to record our initial conversation because we talked about completely different stuff. It was a great conversation too. Very interesting and insightful, and so is this. So
we'll circle back around.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good one, guys.
Sounds good.